all for showing up. I just wanted to start with just a quick update on all things HSA. A huge thank you to all of the parents and some of the teachers who donated to our drive to help support families who might not have received their SNAP benefits at the beginning of the month. Within a week, we raised $1,500. We turned those into $100 Aldi gift cards, which were distributed to families that had reached out and said they needed some extra support by Miss Patterson and Miss Marr. So thank you to everyone who donated. It was just fantastic to see this community come together so enthusiastically and so quickly to help support other families. Also, last week it was a big week for the HSA activities and a wonderful physical manifestation of people coming together at the dance. It was really fun. We had some great teacher turnout as well. Thank you, Miss Ironside, for coming, and Ms. Gelati for coming as well to the dance. Our HSA vice president, who is celebrating his son's birthday tonight, so he's not here, DJ Jamie Grimble, and our HSA 7th grade parent rep, Sean, also a professional DJ, joined as well to DJ and contributed their skills at no cost, which was fantastic and very helpful to us. And a big thank you to all of the parents who volunteered. We also got the swag out this week, so you hopefully should have received swag if you ordered that. And thank you for that support. That earned $400 for the HSA, which is great. And we have some things that are upcoming. A teacher appreciation lunch on December 12th, which is the half day. So spread the word among the teachers. No need to bring lunch, and maybe bring some boxes for leftovers on the 12th, so they don't go to waste. And if anyone wants to help out with that, please feel free to reach out about that. Welcome, Catherine. And the other big announcement, which you should start seeing signs for, is we have locked in some dates in January for Picture Day. We'll first do the 7th and 8th graders and at the beginning of the month, and then the 5th and 6th graders towards the end of the month. And we have a wonderful local photographer who takes those portraits, and it really, the pictures are so great every year. We really appreciate that. So a bunch of things coming up, and just an incredible thank you to the board and all the volunteers who make all of this possible. And welcome, Catherine. Let me let Catherine introduce herself. She knows the drill in terms of name, kids, and neighborhood.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Mahoney. I am the 8th grade representative for the HSA. I've been involved with the board for the past 3.5 years. I have an 8th grader that goes to SLAMS. He is a Zephyr, and I also have a 2nd grader who goes to Nebinger, and I live in the Bella Vista section.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Well, let's get started with the reason why we are all here, which is to have a conversation with some of our wonderful teachers at SLAMS. And we thought it would be great to get some founding teachers and some first-year teachers together for this conversation. So I thought we would start off with, if the teachers could each briefly introduce themselves. What do you teach? How long have you been a teacher? How long have you been at SLAMS? And what's something about you that we should know that we might not know? And maybe we'll start off with Miss Martin.
Yay, first. So hello, everybody. My name's Meredith Martin. I teach students in the makerspace/tech room at SLAMS. I have been teaching for, I hesitate to say, 30 years now. This is year 10 at SLAMS. I've been here since the very beginning. And something about me, I'm sure the kids have probably mentioned I'm an avid video gamer, so I'm taking a short break from the gaming crew tonight to hang out here and chat.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you doing that. So we'll go from founding to first year and send it over to Mr. Green to introduce himself.
All right. Hi, everyone. So yeah, my name is Kassem, or Mr. Green. This is my first year here at SLAMS, my 4th year teaching. I teach 7th, 8th grade Zephyr Humanities. And then, yeah, so before SLAMS, I was actually teaching in New York. I recently moved to Philly. My girlfriend lives out here. And I guess I'd say one interesting fact. So I'm actually originally from the West Coast, which I think the students say like shows up in my demeanor sometimes. But yeah, so that's kind of like one fun fact. And let's see. Did I miss any? Was that the gambit?
No, it's good. Yeah. Welcome, Torero Ellen. We're just having the teachers introduce themselves. And if you want to come off mic and introduce yourself as well, and introduce, sort of who you are and what grade your student is in and what neighborhood you live in. We also just welcome someone else to the call as well. I just let in Jenny. Yes, Jenny, if you also want to just introduce yourself quickly, who your student is, what grade they're in, and what neighborhood you're in.
Hi, everyone. My son is Joseph. We live in West Philadelphia, and he's in 5th grade.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. You haven't missed much. We're just getting started. And we'll send it over to Miss Ironside.
Hi, I'm Miss I. Most people call me, but you can call me Nancy. I've been at SLAMS for 10 years, and I tend to lose count of how many years I was a teacher. I worked for the School District of Philadelphia 3 different times, so third time's a charm, right? But I had a long gap in service to be home with my 2 kids who are now 26 and 24. So it's been probably 20 years would be my guess, but it was a very long gap in service. I teach 5th and 6th grade Pathfinders math in room 206. I do other things too. Like this year I started sort of at the behest of some students, we started this SLAMS racket club, which was, I thought, super fun, actually. We were lucky to get a lot of donations of rackets and balls, and that was fun. We'll try that again in the spring. And something about me is I like to grow. I grow a lot of vegetables, and not right now, but in the summer, I grow a lot of vegetables. So if once it starts like March, I'll start out there in the garden again. It'll be fun. So yeah.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Gelati.
Hi, everyone. Great to be with you. My name is Nadia Gelati. I have been teaching in the School District of Philadelphia for 4 years. I did 1 year as a teacher resident. So I kind of count this as my 5th year, 4 years as a teacher of record. I previously have taught math as well. I teach at SLAMS. This is my 1st year, and I teach Team Phoenix, students on Team Phoenix of 7th and 8th graders science. At my last school, I've taught 7th and 8th math and science, different years. Something about me, I'm originally from New Jersey, so I grew up in Union County. Meredith is giving me the thumbs up because also Jersey. I taught a year of preschool before I moved to Philadelphia. So I do love teaching preschool. I also I worked at Liberty State Park, which is in Jersey City. So we did like nature programs there. And I really love to infuse nature and environmental awareness into my teaching. So it's been great at SLAMS. Thank you for having us to introduce ourselves. Also, shout out to I have 3 advisory family members in the meeting. So good to see you guys too. You're on mute, Mr. Stober.
Thank you. Welcome to Jen and Heather as well. Wonderful. Well, let's get started. I have a question, start off with a question for Ms. Ironside, which is, as a founding teacher, what was the original vision for SLAMS, and what has made you stay and remain excited about teaching here as the school has grown and evolved?
So it's really funny when you come into SLAMS now, like we really look like a school. And when we were in year one, we really didn't look like a school. We had rented space at 36 in Spring Garden, old SLAMS, I like to call it. And we had 90 families who, for some reason, like decided to invest in us, which was exciting, but also terrifying because we weren't anything yet. We were just a bunch of people who had spent the summer together hoping to plan some curriculum for the students. And it was a little daunting. A lot, I think Ms. Martin can probably agree with me. A lot of the projects we planned that year were pretty terrible. And so we've evolved. I think if there's things that are still true from year one, which, you know, there's a lot of things that we were probably happy to walk away from, but the things that are still true are that we are really fortunate to have families who want to invest in us and like send their kids to learn with us. And we're still we're a bigger group of people, but we still are a group of people who really wants to plan fun and meaningful learning experiences for kids. So even though we really look like a school now and we didn't then, I think those two things are still true.
That's great. And Ms. Martin, what is something that you're really proud that you've seen change over the years at SLAMS?
Oh, good question. I think we are seeing, I guess one thing that has changed that I really like is in part our growth. Like as Ms. Ironside was saying, we started so small with just 90 families, and there was a lot of, I don't want to say worry, but like in the back of your minds, it's always like, is this going to work? Are families going to stick with us? Are more families going to want to join us? And it's just been really great to see our SLAMS community continue to grow and expand and kind of learn together as we go through all of this.
That's great. Ms. Gelati, what is something about SLAM's mission and culture and approach to learning that specifically drew you to apply for and accept a job at SLAMS?
I had the pleasure of taking a Drexel course taught by Michael Franklin, excuse me, who's the pre-engineering teacher. So he taught a course called Teaching Engineering Concepts to Children, and I randomly signed up for it. My advisor told me it would be maybe like a good fit. And so I was, excuse me, going to SLAMS like every Wednesday from 2023, like the spring of 2023. So I gotten to know one of the teachers. I'd gotten to see the school and the students. And it was really a great experience. I was teaching in my first year at Juniata Park Academy, which is in the North Philly area. And it was a really different environment there, not very project-based. We taught the school district curriculum. The students had uniforms. So I was kind of like amazed to be in the environment of SLAMS. And so ever since I had like wanted to eventually move there, and very fortunately someone, like the position opened up for 7th and 8th grade science, which is my certification area. So I applied and I decided to accept the job. I'm really interested in the project-based curriculum for science because science is very open-ended and it can be really fun and exciting. And I think that it usually is if it's not just like from a textbook. So it's been a really great experience so far.
That's great. And how about you, Mr. Green? What drew you to SLAMS, and maybe what's something that is different from your previous experiences teaching?
Sure. So I think the project-based learning is kind of primarily what drew me to SLAMS. So like prior to teaching at SLAMS, I taught for 3 years at this school on the Lower East Side in New York called East Side Community High School, which is a part of a performance-based learning model, so very similar in terms of like kind of not having so much of a focus on kind of like the testing-based curriculum and kind of more on finding ways for students to kind of showcase their learning in more kind of creative ways. And so kind of like already having experience in that, teaching wise, I think SLAMS just felt like a school where I already kind of had a familiarity with the way that we kind of teach, the ways that students will learn, and the ways that students will kind of showcase their learning. And then I also felt like this a school where I can kind of bring my kind of like knowledge and kind of projects and things that I've already done and kind of like bring those to the table. And so that was kind of like one big draw. And then I think on top of that, just some of the conversations I had with Tim, and we kind of like connected on some of those same kind of points. And I think just kind of saw where there was just kind of that match there. So I think that was that. Something that's different. So I think at SLAMS, it's a different model. So I taught social studies prior, and SLAMS kind of has like humanities, which in some ways I like the merger of like kind of the social studies and English language arts together, because I'll be honest, like I love social studies. I was a social studies teacher, but kind of getting middle schoolers to access kind of like history can be a lot more challenging than when at SLAMS you can kind of make connections through like non-fictional and fictional texts at the same time, and students kind of are able to make kind of more connections and feel less so like they're kind of sometimes they're like, why are we learning about this time period or the past? And at SLAMS you can kind of be like, well, you can see the parallels between the book that we're reading. We're reading The Hunger Games right now in my class, and they can see the parallels between that and like some past societies or current society, and so that it kind of lends itself to kind of more high interest and more buy-in.
That's a great transition, because I was going to ask you all if maybe one or two of you wanted to share something about a recent project that you had students work on, and to sort of help parents understand a little bit more about project-based learning from the teacher's perspective, right? What were your learning goals, and what's the most exciting thing that you saw students discover in that assignment? Sure, Ms. Martin.
So I am currently teaching both 8th grade and 5th grade. And our 8th graders are currently working on their capstone projects with both myself and Mr. Franklin, where instead of us telling them you're going to do XYZ project, they can self-select into a project of their own interest. And so in some ways it's a really exhausting type of project, because for 2 quarters back to back, I am trying to manage about a dozen different projects at the same time, because they're all doing something different. And it's also really awesome at the same time, because there are so many of these different projects going on, and the students really take ownership of what they're doing. So other than me kind of guiding them along the way, most of them are at the point where they are working almost completely independently with just periodic check-ins, creating things that they are interested in and using skills that we've taught them over the past several years at SLAMS. And I think my favorite part recently has been watching some of them discover that they've not only got the making skills and the project skills, but they also have some entrepreneurial skills. I have several groups of students in my 8th grade who are going out and selling what they are making and making pretty decent money at it. Like, we've got advertisements up all around the school. Kids have made websites to sell their products on. They're hitting up the teachers to design things for them. So it's been really exciting for me to see them get as excited and invested about what we're doing as I am, being the one that helped plan all of it.
Yeah. What a great example. Miss I or Miss Gelati, do you have an example you want to share?
Sure. So, kids are always a little, Mary's projects feel very like natural, right? It's the maker space. We're going to make things. And I think project-based learning in more academic fields can sometimes feel a little bit weird for kids. And so we try to make it as, in math anyway, we try to make it as practical as possible so that they're seeing the connection between the math that we're learning and how it can apply in their lives. We just did kind of a goofy project where we were studying unit rate. So kids had to figure out like the cost per ounce of something. And we did a lot of research. We shopped at a bunch of different stores and we found the best deal on all kinds of things like ketchup and Dr. Pepper, like whatever, like kids could buy anything that they wanted. Marshmallows were big for some reason. And then they had to calculate the unit rate and rank the deals, based on what was the best deal to the worst deal. And then something that I sort of added at the 11th hour that they really, really loved was that then they had sort of a Chopped, if you know the show Chopped, they had to design a meal based on what other people in the class had heard, had researched. So you could add something, right, in addition to the things that were in our little A-band grocery store or whatever, C-band grocery store. But the kids had to, and this really wasn't necessarily math, right? But they had a lot of fun looking at other people's projects and deciding, oh, I could make French toast because I have some bread and I have some eggs, or I could make, I don't know, like a taco salad or something. And one of the reasons why I liked that so much was not necessarily that they got to have fun and go shopping, but the product that they had made, their proof of where the best deal was and what the best deal was something that other people had to use. So they were like, it had to be clear, like, where can I get the best deal and how much will it cost? And it really helped them to design overall a better product because somebody else was going to have to look at it. And so those are some of the things that, maybe the overlooked benefits of project-based learning, that yes, it's cool, they can sell t-shirts and stuff, but also, as Meredith said, they're communicating their ideas to outside audiences. I mean, the audience was our classroom, but it was still outside of themselves, and it wasn't just me and them. They're researching things, they're calculating, they're evaluating deals, and then they're communicating that to other people. It was exciting.
This sounds way better than the standing at a chalkboard that I did in 7th grade solving math problems. So, Ms. Gelati, do you have an example of a project?
Yeah. So students actually today finished up, and we're doing presentations today and tomorrow, a unit on chemical reactions and natural versus synthetic chemicals. So we talked a little bit about different types of chemical reactions, evidence of chemical reactions. We are going to be doing chemical reactions. We didn't do it yet. We're doing it kind of after because of the shipment that we got for the like lab materials. Just came when it came. So we're going to do it next week. But we also talked about natural versus synthetic chemicals. So students were introduced to the concept of like horseshoe crab blood harvesting, which if you are familiar or maybe not, maybe Leo could tell you about it, but it's horseshoe crabs are a keystone species that are older than dinosaurs. So they've been around for, I think it's 450 million years without really changing or evolving their bodies at all. And they have very valuable blood. Their blood is blue, and it is used in the medical industry to test for sterility and for vaccine testing and development. So the questions are, is it ethical to take chemicals from nature or to make them in a laboratory? So students had to we've done a lot of different things on this project, actually. It's because it's so many different concepts together, right? It's not just the science of like, what's an atom, what's a chemical, how do things react, but also like what makes something synthetic? What chemical reactions happen to make something synthetic? So students had to do a project comparing a natural and a synthetic product. So plastic bags, plastic bottles, different medicines. They could pick from a list or come up with their own. One student wanted to do so. One student wanted to do like Beyond Meat, like real meat versus Beyond Meat, and talk about how are the two different, what natural components make up the synthetic product, because everything starts from something natural and then some chemical reaction takes place to make it something we call synthetic. So we kind of use the example of like the natural horseshoe crab blood and the synthetic horseshoe crab blood as like our anchor. And then students did research on their own. And throughout all the science units, we kind of do infuse like an ethical kind of question. So that's been really, really fun because they engage with it, and they debate each other, which is really great. So yeah, it's been a good project. I'll let you know the rest of the presentations tomorrow.
All right, that's great. I'm curious if you find as teachers, and maybe Mr. Green also having taught in an environment like this before, are there common misconceptions that you run into about project-based learning that you hear from students or parents? And how do you maybe address those?
I think, well, I'd say on the student side, sometimes on the parent side, I think students have the misconception that like project-based, like especially if they've had the experience of doing projects in a different school environment, that means like, oh, it's kind of like hang out easy, kind of like chill time in terms of like what the project, what that means for doing a project. It's kind of like something, you know, you kind of put off. And then like, if I did it, then I like get the best kind of possible result. If I didn't do it, then I don't. And I think like, so it's everything SLAMS uses rubrics that are usually very detailed for the students to kind of keep track of like specific skill sets that they need to be able to demonstrate through the process of their project and within the like presentation and end of the project. And I think students, and some kids that, you know, I assume have been here are still surprised by that every time they get a rubric that presented to them that they need to then follow through on. So I think times that is the case. And then I think, yeah, I think with parents, I think sometimes it can be a challenge to kind of understand, because it's like the kind of hard skills are woven into the projects. And so I think understanding like how that comes into play while they're also showcasing those skills in kind of unique ways can sometimes be a challenge if you're kind of not familiar with the kind of like these more unorthodox ways of learning. But those are kind of, I think those are maybe the misconceptions. But if anything, I think like the project-based learning allows for kids to have those hard skills, but also I just feel like middle schoolers, like they also really need like these diverse ways of like learning, because like socially they need to develop, they need to learn how to talk and communicate and collaborate, like all these things that like if they don't get in middle school, I don't know if they'll get it in high school, and I don't know what that means for the life beyond. So yeah.
Absolutely. Any of the other teachers want to chime in on misconceptions and how you address them?
So I think,
Oh, sorry.
oh, sorry.
I have a really quick question. I recently had a parent, this is Finn's in 8th grade, a parent from a different school talk to me about that they thought I should be worried about sending my kid to a project-based school because he wouldn't understand how to take tests, and he would have low PSSA scores, which I thought was very interesting because I had never heard that before. Have you guys ever had people say stuff like that? Like, I was really taken back by it.
I have had conversations like this with, of all people, my 85-year-old father. And not in a bad way, more of him wanting to understand more about what it is I do in my job and how it is similar and different from more traditional learning. And we've often had conversations about, well, if our kids come to us in middle school for project-based learning, which we both agree is pretty awesome in a lot of different ways, how does that affect those kids who then go on to say a more traditional high school in the future, rather than continuing in the project-based style like SLAMS or workshop or something like that? And I think from what I've heard anecdotally, talking to my previous students who have since graduated, for many of them, it seems like they feel they were actually set up better for success in other schools than the kids who came straight from traditional school. They have mentioned that they feel like their problem solving skills are better, that their critical thinking skills are better. And I feel personally that one of the benefits of project-based learning is we're not just teaching kids to regurgitate facts, but we're teaching them to think, we're teaching them to question, we're teaching them to do research, to try and understand more deeply what it is they're learning rather than just rote memorization. So I feel that even though it may be a very different style for some of them, leaving SLAMS and going on to a different high school, I think the skills that they leave us with are going to be more powerful for them in the long run.
What a great answer to that question, and I'm sure it resonates with lots of us about why we chose to have our kids spend time in a project-based learning environment. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about, because it's very important, for all schools to meet the needs of all different kinds of learners. I'm curious about your experiences with meeting the needs of students with IEPs and special, or maybe known as special education plans in a project-based learning environment, and how you found that's worked, and maybe for those of you who've taught in a more traditional environment, how it compares.
So my oldest son had an IEP his whole life, so like it's very personal to me to think about what individual learners need, and I've always felt from the very beginning that project-based learning is, and I feel like families are in on the secret, right? Project-based learning is an ideal setting for most learners, but particularly for diverse learners, right? So kids who maybe need a different way to access the content, or maybe a different way to communicate what they've learned. I feel like it's all of that is embedded in project-based learning. And I feel like we've had all kinds of kids, like medically fragile kids, and, kids on the spectrum. We have had kids, with dysgraphia, like you name it. We've had that kid here. And I feel like all of them have been met where they are, with whatever the class is, whether they have special education support in that class or not, right? Because special education services are typically just for mathematics or the humanities class, but whether it's, Mary's class or even PE with Mr. Gettner, right? Like the kids, the curriculum meets the kids where they are, and the teachers adapt the rubric, sometimes formally, sometimes a little just naturally, but always in a way that's fair, and always in a way where the student can show what they've learned, and maybe show the misconceptions that they still have. But I feel like project-based learning is the place for kids with IEPs.
Thanks, Ms. I don't know if any of the other teachers want to chime in on the topic as well.
Yeah, I can chime in. I think that project-based learning, we've kind of talked about how there's many different avenues into the learning. And I think that like kind of just echoing what Miss I said, really, it offers more than one way to be right and more than one way to show your knowledge and show your learning. Which we know that in like a more traditional curriculum, there's like a pretty rote way to demonstrate mastery, which some students might struggle with based on their disability or any like other challenge that they're overcoming. And so I think project-based learning is really great for students with IEPs because there's more than one way to be right and more than one way to show their learning.
That's great. So I have one more question, and then I want to open it up to the other parents who are on the call. So get your questions ready, and remember that we're not going to be addressing any questions about specific students or your students specifically here on the call, just to respect everyone's privacy in that regard. So my last question for the teachers is, in the context of project-based learning, what's something impactful that parents can do at home to help their students be successful at SLAMS?
Make projects. No, I joke all the time, and my family thinks that I suck, really, because I say, "Oh my gosh, that would be a great rover project." Like, just you're not at work, okay? But when kids get curious about stuff and they bring that to us, that is the best thing ever. Because they can put that in their projects and they can teach their friends and all of that jazz. But I think when kids go places, when kids get interested in stuff, when kids are encouraged to make projects of like their own choosing, even if the project is, I want to cook dinner tonight. Can you help me learn how to do that? Or the project is something, service learning oriented or whatever it is. I think as long as when families encourage kids to like pursue intellectual ideas or things that they wonder about, that's the kind of stuff that we need as parents. That's what we need. More of that.
I'll just kind of echo what Nancy said, in that I think encouraging curiosity and asking of questions is something very powerful for our students, to encourage them to look at the world around them in different ways, to ask questions about what they notice, about what they wonder, and just to have that interest in what's going on around them. And again, it could be something very small and simple. It could be something very big and overarching, as long as they are looking around them, asking questions, and being curious about things.
Fantastic.
I would add, like, I think just familiarizing yourself with some of the like common language that students will kind of know. So just like, I think two big ones is just that they will typically be working on a project in their classes. So being able to, like, if you're kind of looking for that "how was your day" kind of question, you can kind of feed in the kind of like, oh, is there like a project that you're excited about right now? Or there's a particular class that you know that they are either struggling with or that they really like asking them about that class, like, tell me about the projects, or tell me about the rubric, like where are you aiming for on the rubric? I think just those two is like really helpful, because then you get a sense of like, if they are like, ooh, like I'm not able to explain the project very well, right, then we know that's a student that, like, if that was in my class, then I gotta check in with. If they seem to have a really good grasp of that, then what kind of where they're on track, and you have a sense of like, one, how they're grasping the kind of project-based learning, and two, kind of like we were talking about access points, like is this a project that's going to be harder to access? Whereas maybe if you asked them about the last project and they were explaining it really well, we know that they accessed that particular skill set in that project really well. So I think just being able to like check in here and there and just kind of ask project, rubric, what's going on there. Yeah.
Great example.
I can just add, I think making connections with like current events is another really great way to engage students with the reason why they're learning things. For example, our first project was on metals, critical metals, mining practices, and like batteries. So like the metals required for batteries. That's been huge in the news with like rare earth access, right, from the US and China, and to have like access to rare earths for different like electronics, and how that connects to themselves, right? They all have phones, and so just making connections between what they're learning and how that relates to like the broader world, I think is like a good practice as well.
Great suggestions. And now I want to open up to the other parents who are on the call. Feel free to come off mute, use the raise hand button at the bottom, or drop a question in the chat if that's easier for you. Any parents with questions?
Hi, this is Amy. My son Donovan is in 5th grade, so project-based learning is really new to him and to our family as a whole. And I'm really curious, like when I look at the rubric for the different projects, I see they focus on different elements of the project, and I'm wondering how do teachers, like how do you guys evaluate when students might be lacking like a foundational knowledge or skill piece that's related to your class versus maybe a higher level or more creative like application of that within a project? Because like for me, I think about, okay, I can look at the rubric and say like, oh, you know, it looks like your explanation is kind of vague, but then when do you as a teacher determine, oh, you know, you're struggling more with this because like you're actually lacking this English skill that maybe you need extra practice in, versus just like, oh, you're not applying yourself well and you need to use your time better. And how do you support with that?
That's been a real that's been a difficult learning curve for teachers as well, because right, it is a little, it's a little vague, more vague, right? Is this part of the project not meeting expectations because you can't divide, or is it because you didn't divide? So one of the ways I think that all of the teachers will address this is probably not terribly visible in the project. But whenever there is a project, there's always skill development behind the scenes. So that might look like classwork, that might look like some kind of journal entry that the kids are doing, whatever the class is. The skills that are being assessed in the rubric are the skills that are being taught in class. So we're not going to be like, oh, do all this division and now don't forget we're going to ask you to, I don't know, use some fractions now. We're making sure that the time that children are spending in class is addressing the skills and giving practice for the skills that they need to do the project. The kids don't love this, by the way, because they just want to do the project and they're like, oh, you don't want me to like do these word problems? I don't really want to do that. But I think I can say with certainty that if that skill is on the rubric, that the teacher has spent time teaching it to kids, having kids practice it, and giving, reteaching it as necessary. So by the time they're doing the project, they've had exposure, they've had practice, and they've had feedback from the teacher, so that then we have a clearer sense of like, do you know how to do this? Great. And maybe if you didn't do it the first time, right, you do a revision, whatever, do you not know how to do this? Really, all the revisions in the world aren't going to help you because you couldn't do it. But that is at least information that we have. Like, we know that this kid still can't do this yet. And so at some point, we're going to work on that again.
Yeah, I guess I'd also chime in on this question and say that I think with the project-based learning, it lends itself to there being a lot of class time to kind of work with students for extended periods of time on skills that are embedded into the project. So like on certain days, like if I'm working on a project, students are kind of at different checkpoints within the project where we might be looking for specific skill sets. So for instance, in humanities, if we're looking for specifically like being able to showcase like evidence based writing, being able to defend that evidence, right? I kind of will have a sense by the checkpoint of like what students are and aren't struggling with that, and know on that day that which students we need to focus in on to kind of meet that expectation. And I think because with the rubric, I think with students kind of understanding like the language of like meets, exceeds, approaching, they know where they want to be. Typically they want to be at meets or they want to be at exceeds, and know where and so it's just kind of helping them understand what it takes to get there. And I think like for some students, right, and I can't speak for every class, but I know at least in humanities, for some students it may require more of the effort on that part, and then also more from myself and more from the special educators and kind of helping them get there and grasp that skill. But I think then the students get the satisfaction of knowing they did what they needed to do to get to meets or get to exceeds. So I think that kind of lends itself in terms of that skill. And then if they do fall short, right, being able to kind of clearly explain that to them in terms of like, I think students do appreciate to a degree of like knowing it's like this is a skill that you're struggling with, and this is a skill that is like this is a part of like in terms of like the state standards. This is something that we are going to be working on, and this is something we're going to come back to in future projects. You know, this is something that we're going to have to kind of really hone in on, and so that's something that we kind of I think students can appreciate. And yeah, I really would say that the length of the projects provides a lot of like time to really work with specific students.
Thank you so much.
That's great. Let me go to Jenny.
Hi, everyone. I was wondering, how do you support a student who just may be less engaged or hesitant to participate, like during project-based learning? Like, do you as teachers have specific strategies to draw them in, or is peer collaboration relied upon to encourage participation?
I can answer that. When we start a project, not all projects are group projects. Some projects are individual. If a project is a group project, I typically will start by having students like assign roles. And so maybe listing through the description, like who's going to do what part, who's going to be the person to double check everything. Like that's a skill that we do explicitly teach because middle school students might not have that ability, like, you know, coming in. And then kind of like what Mr. Green was saying, the long nature of the project gives us multiple opportunities to meet and check in with students, to troubleshoot, support, whatever they are needing, and then make revisions, right? Like some students really will finish quickly, and then we want to make sure that they're going back and like revising their work because they want to like run through to just be done, to the feeling of like being done. But learning is like iterative, and we want it to continue and we want it to improve. So for students who might not want to jump in with their peers, I think that there are multiple supports, like between putting the roles in place and then checking in with them. And then there's the reflection piece too. At the end of projects, like students are reflecting. So if that's an area where they're struggling, becoming aware of that is kind of like step one for like the next project.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Well, we are at 8 o'clock, and I want to respect everyone's time. So if you need to go, please feel free to go. Thank you so much for joining us. If the teachers could spend 5 more minutes, we have two more questions. I'd be happy to answer those. That would be great. And if anyone needs to go, feel free to go. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. So let's go to our next 2 questions. We had one from Catherine and one from Michelle. So maybe we'll take them back to back and let the teachers answer them. Catherine.
I wanted to just quickly ask about the difference between, with not giving them like A, B, C grades, and they have the rubric with meets expectations, exceeds. I wanted to know, is that something that you guys find helpful? Because I know like Finn came from a traditional learning school, and like they would say things like, oh, you just have to work harder, you have to pay attention more. And like now, I mean, he's leaving this year, but he has those things where he can go to the rubric and like see like, oh, I don't need to work harder, I need to, revise this, I need to organize or whatever. So I just wanted to know how you think it helps the students, opposed to having that pressure of like A. It's more of like they can choose what they want to, like where they want to be on the rubric.
And Michelle, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Thanks for sticking around for a couple extra minutes. But I was just curious, coming out of elementary school where there's so much focus kind of on social and emotional development, and that's something we get a lot of feedback on for the teachers. And I know we're shifting into a different era, but I was just curious how you think about incorporating that kind of learning or teaching in your classes as well as the subjects. You're very brave to be around middle schoolers.
I think I can kind of jump in to answer Michelle's question. While we do work in all of our classes around social emotional learning, I feel like the bulk of that happens in our advisory program. And one of the things that I love about our advisory program is it's not just a single year. Like it's not, oh, I have you guys in my advisory for a year, then you get a whole nother adult to get comfortable with. We as advisors are with our students for their entire time at SLAMS, and we get to watch them grow. We get to watch them figure out who they are as young adults, and hopefully help guide them along those paths into becoming better human beings, becoming empathetic human beings, and helping them with those more soft social skills as opposed to the harder academic skills as well. So I think that is one of our big benefits, is having this ongoing program that lets us build these relationships, not just with the students, but with the families as well, and being able to work with them over that extended time period.
And I'll just jump in to the end of what Ms. Martin just said, that I think one of the nice things about advisory is how much the kids identify with one another. Maybe not right away in 5th grade, but I think each advisory sort of has their own identity, and the kids they're in will, they know each other well. And sometimes that's real care when someone else needs it. And sometimes that's like playful, like, we knew you were going to say that kind of stuff. But I think that the students, it doesn't just go between the adults and the kids. I think amongst the students, there's a lot of bonding, for lack of a better word, that really helps, with friendships and, fun times and even moments that are harder. So I think that's another nice offshoot of advisory. But Catherine, to your point, I really hate giving grades, like a lot. And so I would love to never give them ever. And we don't work in that kind of world. But I do think the rubric has definitely helped families and children understand that it's not just about being nice or trying. It's, do you know how to do this skill? Great. You're meeting expectations. Do you not know how to do this skill? Let's learn. And I think it takes away a lot of the, frankly, I can't think of the right word, the disequitable ways maybe that kids have been assessed in the past. So like, are you annoying? Sorry, you get a D. So you can be annoying and still know how to do the work, and then, right, you're meeting expectations. So we're not grading your behavior.
Yeah.
We're not grading how cute you are. We're not grading that you brought in tissues. We're grading that you did the work. So that's really the whole hope behind the rubric. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, or also likewise, are you a really sweet kid, but you haven't actually learned the material, and you're getting an A because you're a really sweet, nice kid, and no one's getting any indication at home that you need some extra help with things. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think one of the things that families new to SLAMs kind of grapple with at first is the idea that, that dichotomy between the meeting and exceeding expectations. Because for many folks coming from a traditional school, they see the exceeding expectations category as, oh, that's the A category.
Yeah.
And for many folks, that means, oh, you did everything right, you get an A. Whereas at SLAMs, you've shown us you know the skill, you've answered whatever you need to answer, you've gotten things correct, great. That's a meeting expectations. For exceeds, we are pushing you to go beyond just the basic understanding and go further, to show more, to put that extra effort in, to find new ways to share, to explain, to demonstrate your understanding, to, create an extension of whatever it was you're learning. And I think that's a kind of a hard thing for both kids and families to grasp at first. But it's been really neat over the years watching the kids in that progression from 5th grade to 8th grade grow and change and move away from just, I want, this grade because I got everything right, to, hey, I can really, express myself in different ways, show my learning in different ways, and maybe have a little fun with what I've learned and work towards that exceeds expectations. And I think it gives them a lot more, I think they feel more proud of themselves when they start hitting those exceeds expectations, because it really means a lot more than just, hey, I understand this concept. Now I can apply what I've learned.
Definitely. Wonderful. Well, we are now almost 10 minutes over the time we were going to end. I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us, and a special, just real deep gratitude to the teachers, to Ms. Gelati, Ms. Martin, Mr. Green, Ms. I, for joining us tonight, taking time out of your evenings to be here. I think one of the things that, for me, that is just so special about SLAMs is that it's a building full not just of teachers, but of real passionate educators, and it comes through every day. You feel it when you're walking around in the hallways. You see it in the feedback that our kids receive from you all, and I think we all saw it and felt it here tonight. So thank you all for joining us, and it was really great and a really special conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Oops.